Welcome to the Biz and Mayhem podcast, where we talk about the mayhem in our lives and how to get ahead in business and your career. This is Chris Batchelor, and I'm here with my co-host, Tara Parker. Let's get started. Well, welcome everyone to another episode of the Biz and Mayhem podcast. My name is Chris Batchelor. I'm here with my co-host, Tara Parker. How's it going tonight, Tara?
Pretty good, Chris. How are you doing today?
Oh, I am doing just fine. We are, almost at the official end of the first week of the Biden administration, and we're all still here. Although we have had some things that we don't like, I think.
Yeah, there's definitely some discourse, if you will, to offer the Biden administration from the several people in the country.
Yeah, a lot of discourse, and we got some news here from the newsroom to start that off. So let's play the newsroom.
Sounds good.
This is the newsroom. All right, so the first article I have here revolves around the National Guard, and of course, after the Capitol got stormed, there was a big push for security at the White House, for the inauguration. So, we had a couple of interesting things happen there. So the first one here is that the COVID kind of National Guard got COVID at the White House. So, I don't know, what do you make about all this?
I'm probably the worst person to ask, given my attitude towards the whole pandemic idea. I'm not a big proponent of this whole thing being a pandemic. I'm not a proponent of much that has to go along with it. I think it's very much politically driven. But this particular thing, it's like, where's the preparedness in all of this? When you do have a pandemic, when you have a concern, a worldwide concern, what steps were done to make sure? Did they have it before they got there? Did they get it while they were there? Like, if they're going to place blame, who gets to finger point and who gets to receive the finger on this one? So it's crazy, because I think I didn't follow this story as closely, but I think I heard somewhere around the number of 100 cases were confirmed. Not that there were symptoms, but 100 cases, 100 tests were confirmed. And so I don't know. What do you know about it? What are your thoughts?
Well, so my understanding is they brought around 5,000 troops to the Capitol to bring in security for the inauguration.
Right.
Apparently, there was we have another story here about how they weren't treated very well. They were given some less than ideal accommodations, but they were in a situation where you have an administration that is supposedly hyper focused on this COVID thing. And keeping people safe from COVID. It seems like there was a definite slip in judgment when it came to the military. And, I saw another article that I didn't put in here, but it made a good point for all of the hype around COVID and how dangerous COVID is and how we need to shut down and wear masks and destroy the economy and all those kinds of things. People were saying, why did we have an inauguration event? Why was this not online? Why did we allow thousands of people to go to D.C. and have a big party when clearly we've been touting stay home for months? It blows my mind.
Well, if you get to make the rules, then you get to not abide by those rules. But I think that's the going theme for the Democratic Party right now, unfortunately, is rules for thee, but not for me. And it's one of those things where do as I say, not as I do. And people are starting to get really pissed off because they're starting to catch on. And this is another one of those things, like you said, why were they even gathering? I remember the news making a very big production. It was proudly stated, in fact, that there were only going to be 2,000 people attending. And it's like, well, that doesn't make anybody feel any better. There shouldn't be any 1,000 attending, right? Like, this shouldn't be a thing at all. It's, especially when the Democrats have been really pushing, you need to stay home, you need to not go out, you need to wear masks, you need to take the vaccine when it comes available. And yet there's been 3 different Democratic leaders at the state level that have been caught out in public without their masks in events that they have not endorsed. They've told you not to go to themselves. And so, it's that's why I'm not. That's why I think this whole thing is so political. The more you have these kinds of stories, the less value the pandemic has in my mind, and the less serious they're making it. People are trying on Facebook to say they're sharing their personal stories of how they're losing loved ones because of effects of COVID, and in conjunction with something else. These people aren't just dying from COVID; they have other underlying circumstances taking place. But then you have these stories like this where it's like people are fighting over, why didn't you do this? Then this, these, maybe the National Guard would not have so many people sick right now. So it's such a fiasco, this whole stinking thing. I don't know. I'm kind of COVIDed out at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think this rolls really nice into the second story we have here, which
Hmm.
is the National Guard soldiers were ordered home by governors amid outrage that they were in the state. They were in one of the buildings at the Capitol, and then right before the inauguration, they decided they didn't want the soldiers there, and then they moved them into a parking garage. And we actually have some pictures of this, so I'm going to cut to that right now.
Yeah.
So I think this was the governor of Texas said, enough is enough. We're going to send our boys and girls home. And so we have a picture here from the parking garage. And, basically they were tweeting and putting on social media that said, hey, we are, basically sleeping in less than ideal accommodations here. And then I saw a report that, President Trump did open up the Trump Hotel there in D.C. for some of these folks.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, if you're going to have a party during COVID and have the military there to provide security, not very good optics for, this
No.
administration that supposedly is going to put themselves at the forefront of this COVID thing and being safe during COVID.
Well, and this is I've been following this story pretty closely, specifically on Fox News, and I'm not. I'm a back and forth fan of Geraldo Rivera because Fox News likes to have him. That he's one of the contributors, and he made this. He turned it out to be like, this isn't really that big of a deal. They're used to roughing it. Well, yeah, when the circumstances call for it. This didn't call for it. These guys were called in. They had somewhere to be during the whole party, and then all of a sudden they're no longer needed for the party, and they're told to go hang out in a garage. And I don't want to hear about, well, it was a heated garage or they're used to this sort of thing. No, this when you're up in the Capitol and there's a hotel nearby with available rooms, doesn't that make sense? Or am I missing
Yeah.
something? Like, is this going to fall under fake news where there's information missing? Is it being made out to be worse than what it is? Um, and I've seen a few other military individuals who have a military career that have said, when you're working in stations like this, doesn't bother us. This doesn't bother us because when we get a chance to break, we just go lay down wherever we can. Like we just make it work. Well, that's great, but it's our tax dollars that are paying for you to be there. And by golly, damn it, if you're going to be there to support a guy that we're not even sure legitimately won the election anyway, can we at least have you comfortable when you're off duty? Like, can we make this a little bit easier for you guys? Because there's politicians who are sleeping in grand hotel rooms that the taxpayer is also paying for. Can we not do that for our individuals who have selflessly given up their freedoms, as it were, because they're GIs, they're owned by the government pretty much? And can we not give them a little bit of a luxury? I don't know. This might hit a sore spot with me just because of my past affiliations with the military in terms of family members who have were KIA in combat, and I just feel like we should be treating them with the utmost respect and care that we possibly can. That we should definitely be showing them more hospitality than what has been.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we need to, certainly show them the respect that they deserve for sure. But I think the big point here is that the Biden administration should have thought about this inauguration a little bit differently instead of having a big party with
Mm-hmm.
all these people present and causing a big security risk. And then also, we haven't used the word yet, but it's a super spreader event. I mean, they called Trump's, every time Trump went and campaigned, they called it a super spreader event, right?
Yeah, they
Even
had.
though, even if that was true or not, And so far, the media here hasn't used the word super spreader for any of the inauguration. So, I
Right.
mean, if that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what does, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting how much flack Trump took for his get-togethers, but this one, the media doesn't seem to care. They're just like, "What? This is fine. It's normal." I mean, it's like again, rules are for thee, but they're not for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just goes to show you how, how we like to have two sets of rules in the liberal media here. And so I'm going to roll
Yeah.
into the next thing here. This is interesting. So 1 hour after Biden was inaugurated, the World Health Organization changed how they are counting COVID positive cases. So I'm going to
Oh.
cut over here to the article. So apparently. What they did was they started counting COVID positive cases that were only strong positives, where previously they were counting weak and strong positives. So I just, it just goes
Well,
to show you this is all politics. This is a bunch of crap. I mean, they couldn't even wait a couple of weeks to change how they counted things, right? They're going to immediately start counting things differently when they have a different president because they want to push a different agenda. And so,
well, what is the difference between a strong and a negative? Have you ever taken a? You would. I'm not going to ask you that. Ladies out there who've taken a pregnancy test, have you? If you've taken one of these, there's no strong positive and negative. There's no. There's. It's just positive. It is just. It's not like. Is there like more than one virus? Is there like a viral family that moves in and we're testing for family members? Like, what the hell is this? That
well,
it
I'm not going to
blows my
be
mind.
clean. I'm not going to claim to know all the science behind this, but I think they have tests out there that basically say there's a certain percentage chance that this person could have COVID, and they're counting those as COVID positive. Whereas a strong positive test is, yeah, that person definitely has COVID. So, but they're basically manipulating the numbers at this point. It's we're going to count it differently, and obviously the numbers are going to go down, right?
Well, and they better, but that goes to the point I had tried to make, and not particularly on the show, but in previous conversations with other individuals that have said, I tested positive for COVID. Well, did you test positive for COVID-19 or did you test positive for coronavirus? Because those are two very different things. The coronavirus is the viral family that COVID lives in, which is also the cold. The cold lives in the same viral coronavirus family. And so there's something specific about the COVID-19 virus that these testers should be picking up. But one of my friends said, nope, my test said I just came up positive for coronavirus. Well, that can mean so many different things, but they're all being counted as positive COVID-19 tests. And so, just to your point, the numbers are inflated. They are going crazy. And I was recently sick, and everybody's like, you've got COVID. No, there's
Yeah.
other things to be sick with. There's so many other things to be sick with. And I had a cold, and it turned into laryngitis, and it turned into a sinus thing and a double ear infection. And it's been fun, but it hasn't been COVID.
Right. Yeah, I think when there's a lot of nuances to the science here, and the reporting itself hasn't exactly been truthful. I think there's been a lot of bias in
No.
the reporting, and it's just one of those things. I think you just it's a buyer beware thing. You have to just kind of
Yeah.
take the news with a grain of salt, and know that if you're
Well,
coming from any of the mainstream media, I mean, you're going to have some sort of bias there.
yeah, but when you take it with a grain of salt, there's so many people rely on the news to give them the information that they don't want to go research themselves. And that's very dangerous. And that's the media exploiting the sheep out there. And that's not to insult anybody, but quite honestly, there's been times I did just follow the media aimlessly and then realized, oh, you didn't know what you were talking about. And so that's why I've not been a big proponent of a lot of what's been part of mainstream media, is because I, having been a college student and being now a college adjunct instructor, I have access to those studies and to those peer reviewed articles. And I know that you do as well, Chris. And there's a lot of information out there that the news is not reporting on, or that other people don't have access to without paying a monthly subscription. And there is a lot of information out there to consider before buying into the whole we're all gonna die mentality that the news is trying to sell us on.
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely it's definitely something you got to watch out for. So, in
Yeah.
other news here, Biden administration freezes Trump HSS rule meant to lower insulin prices. So, not only I'm sure you saw the news about the Keystone Pipeline, where thousands of
Oh,
jobs are being lost now for the Keystone Pipeline. Now
yes.
we're going to be changing rules that help poor people get low cost insulin. What's your take on that?
So this one also kind of hits close to home to me. I am what you call a hyporeactive glycemic, and that means that I process sugars really stinking quickly. And I mean very quickly. Within 30 minutes, I've processed whatever food I've eaten, and my sugars jumped up, and then it's dropped back down, and I'll crash more than the typical person does just off of regular food. And so, I do live the life of a diabetic for the most part, which sucks because I have a massive sweet tooth. And so my doctor keeps me aware of the fact that one day I could be insulin dependent. And I've heard horror stories from my friends and family that have been or are insulin dependent, and those have not been. It's not been an easy expense to manage and maintain.
Yeah.
And so knowing that some people can't get that because of the price and insurance won't pay for it, it's always been a wonder, like, why is something that's literally life sustaining, it's something that to some people is almost like air, you have to have it to live, why is it so dang expensive? Why not lower that cost? Are we killing rare animals in the Arctic for this insulin? No, we're not. This is coming from, I think, pigs or something along those lines. My medical friends out there will need to chime in, but I think lowering it is a good thing. I think you need to make these kinds of things that many people are dependent upon for life, just to live, not live comfortably, just live. It should almost be a human right type of thing because it's the right to life.
Yeah, I mean, is it akin to water, right? I think that's the
Mm-hmm.
big question here. I mean, the bigger question is why did somebody become president and then immediately roll back rules that would keep medications affordable for people? It kind of blows my mind, and I think a lot of people are going to have some buyer's remorse over this president because everybody was kind of talking about, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And he's immediately come into office and he's really, done some things that have got a lot of people stirred up.
Yes, yes, very much so. I mean, with the between this and I'm going to crunch COVID now, he's like, oh, we can't take care of that for a really long time. Like, we will not be able to handle that forever.
Yeah. Remember
Or,
how that tone changed?
oh my gosh.
Eh,
Or, yeah, school debt. I was going to take care of all that, but I don't think I can do that now. I didn't say that. And that's what's like, I love the fact that you called it buyer's remorse because you're not the first person to refer to this situation as buyer's remorse. And unfortunately, folks, for those of you who do have buyer's remorse, there's not a lemon law. We are stuck for the next 4 years with these kinds of backhanded decisions. And I hope that he's forgetting the next day what decision he's made so he can make a better one. But I don't think that's going to be how that goes, unfortunately.
yeah.
I,
I think, I mean, typically what happens in this sort of thing is right now, the Democrats really control the House and, Congress and the executive branch. And so they really have nobody to blame but themselves. If they don't like what goes on the next 2 years, until midterm elections, then they've got no Republicans to blame here. Let's be
right.
very clear about that. The media cannot no longer say that it was Trump's fault. They can no longer say it's the Republicans' fault because they have the majority. They are able to
Yeah.
vote these things in if they want. And so I think
Yes.
it's going to be very interesting to see what they actually do. And I think you're going to see
Yeah.
this liberal agenda soften because I think a lot of people really can't stomach some of these far extreme liberal views. Um,
They are
and
hard to
and I
choke down.
I, I think I think you're going to see a lot of Democrats, get voted out here. And typically, what happens is you'll have super control like this, and then the next election in 2 years here, we'll see the Republicans take over. You know, uh, you know, basically Congress or the House. We'll see what happens.
Yes.
But yeah, I think it's going to be a long 2 years.
Well, it's been a long 2 years already with some of like the what do they call those girls? The quad squad? You know,
Yeah, the
it's hard to believe
squad.
that
Yeah,
it's hard to believe that they've been in office as long as they have because it feels like longer. the kind of ideologies that they're bringing to the table, along with Biden going back and forth. Which honestly, I think those who are anywhere near the right side, the middle to the slightly right side, are going to know that Biden was going to do this. So I don't think these are new things. But when you have these kinds of decisions that are being made, time takes forever. And they're going to be very detrimental to people. This is going to, I mean, the nation's going to feel that they're going to miss Trump, is what's going to happen. Those who didn't like Trump are going to realize, oh crap, maybe he shouldn't have a microphone or a phone to voice his opinion, because it can be hard pill to swallow. But we were sitting kind of pretty with him in office, and I think that things are going to change. And if you ask our Keystone Pipeline friends that woke up one morning after the signing with a pen and had no job, I think if you ask them, they'll tell you how that feels right off the bat. It's just, wow. So 4 years.
Well,
Four.
I think to be clear, we're going from one extreme to another, right? I think that,
Yeah.
Trump had good things and he had bad things about him.
Oh, yeah.
There's no denying that. He was not a perfect president. He did get a lot of things accomplished that he said he was going to do.
Yeah.
As far as presidents go, I think he had one of the better track records for getting things done.
Yeah.
He may have done it in an unorthodox method, which, may have pissed a lot of people off. But,
Yes.
I'm not going to sit here and say he was a perfect president. It was awesome. And,
No.
but I do think once people see the other side of this coin here with this liberal agenda, I do think that, in a year to 2 years, people are going to really wish that we had something more moderate, which brings me to the point that this is fantastic for us as a country, because this now allows the moderates to come through and shine, to where we've now had both extremes, the left and the right. I really think in the midterms, you're going to see a lot of moderates really take the ballots and get voted
Yeah.
in. So, this isn't maybe a good thing. It's going to be a little bit painful. I think, we'll see some pretty crazy stuff get talked about between now and then. Hopefully, the liberals will decide that some of their agenda is a little bit radical once they actually try and institute it. And we won't see some of those things come across. But it's certainly going to be a long 2 years. But I do think that in the end, the moderates, that we're going to see a lot more moderates taking home the votes in 2 years.
Yeah, I think we will see quite the pendulum shift in 2 years. I totally agree with you, and I hope so, to be honest with you. But just 2 years is still a long time.
Yeah, and
Never.
I did see an
No.
article that Trump is casually talking about starting another party. I don't think that will happen. There's been some sources close to him that says that that's really just talk right now, and that's not going to
Right.
happen. But I do think that the president is going to do something, whether it's a media conglomerate or whether
Well,
he is supporting super PACs or things like that. I think you're going to not see the last of President Trump.
no. In fact, since the impeachment didn't go through the way they, I mean, he was, what is that called? He was cleared, for lack of a better way to put it, whatever the actual terminology is. If I need my constitutionalist buddy to chime in here, but he's not going to be held liable for the January 6th event at the Capitol Hill, and I don't think he should be either. And that means that he can run for president again, which means I think here in 2 years we're going to see his campaign start to resurface and gain momentum. And I think they're going to spend the next 2 years strategizing and knocking on doors. I think they'll do some old-fashioned door-to-door handshaking, baby kissing stuff to get him back into the White House, because he'll have to go through and fix everything. Quite honestly, I mean, Biden signed what? He's up to 29 executive orders in his first week of office, and they're
Yeah, you really can't
not.
even keep track of what he's doing, right?
No, it's like, does he even know? Did you see there was a clip that I saw on I think it was Fox News, and I saw it on Facebook as well, where he's signing this executive order, and he's got his mask on. You can't read his lips, and you're assuming what you hear is coming from him because of his nonverbal body language. But he's like, "What am I signing? What is this? Oh, okay, I'll just sign it."
Yeah.
And you kind of like, "Oh no."
Well, I mean,
Please tell me
Pelosi,
that
right? We
was.
got to sign this bill to find out what's in it. I mean, that's just,
Oh,
how many times have we seen
yes.
that?
Oh, it's that is scary. And these people work for us. That's the problem. But they don't see, they don't work that way. And I
Well,
think
but
that,
here's the thing. I think what people are going to find out about over the next year, 2, 3, 4 years is that they don't work for us, and
well,
that's
they,
that
yeah,
they say they do, but in the end, they really work for them and their special interests. And I think that's where a lot of people are going to have buyer's remorse. And I think that Trump, with all of his flaws and as mad as he made people, I really don't think that he worked for the special interest groups.
no,
And
they couldn't buy him
that's
off, Chris. They couldn't afford to buy him off. That's just the thing with him. Most politicians have a price tag, and Trump didn't. He never had a price tag. He could afford the price tag and then some. So I think that's why he pissed off so many politicians, is that they couldn't sit him down, and they didn't have anything that he wanted. He had everything. And so, yeah, he did work for the people. He absolutely did. I mean, hell, he worked for free. He didn't take a paycheck. To my understanding, he donated that to a charity.
yeah, that's my understanding too. But well, more to come. We'll see what happens with this administration and see where they go. And but I really don't feel like they work for the people. And maybe
No.
I'll be proved wrong. Hopefully, I will. But I think at the end of the day, it's the special interest groups behind the scenes that are pulling the strings. And they're going to get their policies through and their benefits, but and I think that's going to make it very confusing, right? Because I think
Yeah.
it's not going to be apparent what's really going on because they're going to say one thing and do another.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Just can we fast forward? Just
Yeah, let's
just
talk
fast
about
forward.
something else here. So I've got an article here about Google. Let's switch to the Googles. Not that that's any better
Oh,
from a you know from a over Big Brother aspect, but at
the
least it's
big
something
tech.
different. The big Yeah, we're gonna go from Big Brother to Big Tech.
Big tech.
So Google plans to replace the need for college degrees with 6 month certificates. That's what they're talking about, and they're basically saying that college degrees are expensive and they take a long time to get, and they may not have all of the value that they used to have. So I don't know. What's your take on that?
So I this is going to come from somebody with an associate's, a bachelor's, and a master's degree. So
So
I
just a
invested
little bit
in
of
I invested a lot in myself, and so I mean that's to there are some, and I also, to add to that, to add a qualifier, I used to work for a university. I worked for a private university, and so I've got some definite feels about this. And there are certain situations where a certificate is totally fine. I get that. There are other situations where a college degree is absolutely mandatory. And so if you're working for Google, I doubt you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, where you have to have a certain amount of education to know what you're doing and how to do it when you don't know how to do it. When you are talking about IT stuff, the IT industry, it's been around for quite a long time. The education to it, the formal higher education, has not been. It's still fairly new. In fact, cybersecurity programs are just coming about the last 5, 10 years, and so there's a lot of evolving and a lot of growth going on with those areas. And so I can see where those certificates are going to be important, because in the cybersecurity or in the IT industry, certificates are what's key. And you have a certificate, you have to keep up with it. You have to have the continuing education units to make sure that those are still applicable and that they're viable. So that makes sense. But with business degrees, I can kind of see how a business degree, it's a dime a dozen anymore. I remember when the MBA used to be a very illustrious degree. Everybody wanted one because very few had them, and now
right.
everywhere you turn, there's and so Jane Doe with MBA, as though it's a designation. It's not a designation, it's a degree. Very big difference. The
Yeah.
PhD is a designation. You're a doctor of whatever your discipline was. That's very different. And so, if they are planning to replace college degrees with 6 month certificates, what is that about? Are we talking 6 months of accounting and straight accounting work? Are we talking 6 months of just business analytics? What are they doing with this? And so if it's done right, yeah, it could be really good. But if it's, you know, it's not going to be applicable to everything. There's certain degrees. My degree couldn't have been attained in 6 months. There's a lot of different variables, but it's more like a people engineering degree, than, say, accounting. But I know accounting's not my thing. I can't account to save my life. That's why I make fun of my accounting friends. I don't know how you devalue something and then make that worth something, but you do. I just So I think it's a very slippery slope. I think you need to be very careful. And I think you're going to take off a lot of people who worked so hard to get those degrees, only to be told, yeah, that person studied for 6 months and we know you studied for 4 years, but we're going to go ahead and promote them instead. So it's a slippery slope, but then you're kind of going to get into if you don't have a degree, but you've got 25 years of applicable experience, then what? Are they any
Yeah,
less?
I'm with you. I think this sort of there's a big it depends, right? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
if you're going for certain professions, I don't think that that a 6 month degree is enough.
Right.
Certainly in my field in engineering, I think that for a lot of things you need a full engineering degree.
Right.
But for other parts of our job, we do have in engineering, we do have people that run the computers and do the drawings and things like that. And there are times when those people need to be full up engineers with a lot of experience, and there's times when they
Yeah.
don't. So I think that there's a big it depends qualifier on a lot of this stuff. And I think what you're seeing though is that businesses have identified the need to specialize, and you really can't specialize with a 4 year degree or generic master's degree. I mean, an MBA is nice, but it's not specific in anything, right?
No.
But you
No.
can take a certificate course in something specific.
Right.
And so I think what you're going to see is the continuing education part is going to be much different from where you used to just go get a master's and call it quits. I think now you're going to go get a certificate course, and then your job changes a little bit. And 2 years later, you go get another certificate for 6 months,
Right.
and you do some more specific targeted training.
Right. And there's a couple of colleges, both we've got two major colleges here. I say major. We've got a major college and a private college that are trying to get into this industry of certificates. And but the problem is defining their value here in the Midwest. You're going to get an eye roll if you've got a certificate unless it's something IT oriented. So it's great that Google is going to sit down. They're going to do some trailblazing with that and make the certificates worthwhile. But again, it depends. And you really need to be careful, because if you do a 6 month accounting certificate and it's worth the same as a 4 year degree in accounting, that makes me wonder either about Google or about the degrees themselves. And I'm going to wonder about Google, because the degrees have been working for years. But if Google's saying you only need 6 months and you're going to be a specialist, that's great. And specialists are important. There's a place and a time and a place for them. But at the same time, it's really hard to cross train if you've got several different specialists and nobody can do what the other person can. And that's a recipe for failure. So it's like you said, big it depends, big if, big be careful. But we're also talking about a company, Chris, that has a playroom for their employees. So
Yeah. I
you
mean,
got
the other thing that
to
crossed my mind with all this stuff is, is this more towards a move of temporary labor? Is this a move towards
oh,
contract labor where, contractors generally go by their experience and not by the degrees that they have. And so
right.
I'm just wondering if this is a broader move towards lower cost labor.
Well, doesn't Google have like a salary floor? Like there's a specific starting level that every employee starts out at no matter what. I thought Google was one of those companies that had that. I'd have to look into it. It's been several years since I did that study. But I thought Google is one of them. That would make sense if you're
Yeah,
looking to break up that.
I'm not sure. I haven't heard that, but I haven't looked for it either. I do know that Google has made a lot of their employees mad, and they are now trying to organize. But I did read that the unionized part of the Google workforce is like 2%. So they've got a long way to go before they have any bargaining power, with the
Oh,
companies. So, but generally when workforces try to unionize, it means that people aren't being treated very well because, if you treat them well, they're not going to want to go through the hassle of creating a union, right?
well, let's talk to Amazon employees about that, huh? Let's ask them what's happening in Amazon that they got to create a union for.
Yeah, all
Curious.
sorts of crazy things going on across the big tech. So I have another story here that I'll bring up about big tech, and there's a North Dakota bill Now it's just a bill; it's not a law yet, and there's a lot of things that have to happen to turn a bill into a law.
Yeah.
But it would allow lawsuits over big tech censorship, and I just was kind of in my mind going, is this sort of the next step? Is this how we're going to keep big tech? Is this how we're going to keep them accountable? Is that the state law? Because if you have 50 different states that have censorship laws, you're going to have 50 individual lawsuits against censorship, and it's going to make the legal department of all these big tech companies very shy of doing any sort of censorship or doing anything that would get them in a position to be sued.
This is, I think we're back to the slippery slope idea. Um, I do think that, again, I believe in free enterprise. So if Facebook and Twitter wanted to censor, okay, but I think you have to take the consequences that go along with that, and that means you also have to allow for other platforms to allow to also enjoy free enterprise. And so I'm going to get specific here and mention Parler because I was on Parler, and it was very nice to see all the good, the bad, and the ugly that you can see from people. And yet the big tech shut that down because Amazon, as a server provider, said you guys don't follow our standards. Okay. I think I don't know what all that is about. I'm not familiar with those ins and outs, but at the same time, I don't know that you have a right to tell another. I don't think one business has a right to tell another business how to run. I never would have associated Parler to Amazon because I didn't know Amazon hosted anything at the platform level. And so that to me, they're not liable. And in my opinion, Parler or Facebook or Twitter, none of those guys are liable for what other people say. They just give everybody a platform. You say what you say, and then the person who's saying it owns the liability, in my opinion. But if that's not how it's being run in the background that we don't know about, what's going on? Like, what's the fine print that we're not seeing where these people are censoring others and they're shutting other companies down because they're not following the standards that they created? That's where I'm kind of getting curious at about all of this.
Yeah, I think
So
a lot of people don't realize just how enmeshed the big tech companies are, right? I mean,
right,
Amazon hosts a lot of. I mean, Amazon hosts part of Twitter. Apparently, is what came out of over all of
yeah,
this, and Amazon hosts a lot of other companies and things. So, I mean, that's a big part of their business is web hosting services, and that's fine. I mean, they have the computer farms for that and all that kind of stuff. But,
right,
basically, when you are the web host, you have you can dictate to other companies what they can and can't do on your service.
right,
And so, I think, to an extent, they do have, a right to, basically turn a service off if they, think that it's a liability to them. But, if they're going to turn the service off because it's a competitor that they don't like, then that's, another story. But,
yeah,
as private companies, I think they're pretty much can do, whatever they want because, free speech doesn't apply to a private company in that instance. So, it's not like it's a government website kind of thing. So, it's really
mhm,
interesting. And, I mean, there's a large opportunity out there for somebody that wants to spin up a big web host to host
yeah.
conservative media.
You
But
might
that's
see a
what the free
Trump
market
version.
does.
You might, well, see, that's the thing. It's not a free market. If one business can shut down another business because they don't like their business dealings, then that isn't right. And if Amazon doesn't want to be held liable, put that in your legal documentation in the contract. That's what the legal team is for, right? So I don't feel like this is a liability issue. I feel like it's I think it's a political issue. The far left saying we don't want anybody seeing this stuff. We don't want people thinking this way. Shut it down and do what you have to do. And I bring that up because I remember a few years ago when the Zuck was on, he was at Capitol Hill and he had to testify because the government came down on him saying, you're selling data you're not supposed to be selling. You are violating people's privacy and you're not supposed to be doing that. And I think and he wasn't, I mean, he was held liable for a couple of things, but I think ultimately the government said, wait a second, we have an idea for you. We'll let you off this hook a little bit, but you're going to have to play nice with us.
Yeah.
And those kinds of things I think have happened because Zuck hasn't been back on the spotlight with the government in quite some time, and he was up on that spotlight off and on religiously for as long as I can remember. I got tired of hearing about him. In fact, that's how you learned who he was because he was being put on the spot, and he was being asked by Congress all kinds of questions. He's being interrogated for the way his business was running. And so yeah, I don't know that I'm curious as to why do we need a bill that's going to allow you to sue for censorship? Why are companies being able to shut other companies down? Aren't the lawyers doing their job in preventing the liability? I mean,
Well, but
that's
that's the problem right now is you got that, what is it, Section 230 thing, which basically
yeah.
says that they're not liable for the content that's on their platform, so they can't be sued, right? I mean, so they have protections now that
Right.
allow them to operate sort of in this gray area, and I think what they're trying to do with these laws is say, no, if you're going to act like that, where you're going to moderate these businesses like this, then you do not should not get the protection of that Section 230. So, I mean, there's a lot
Hmm.
of fine detail points with the legal
Yeah.
stuff here, but I think at the end of the day, if Facebook decides that they're only going to have liberal speech on their platform, then that's fine. They're a private company. Then I mean, there'll be other platforms that spring up that allow conservative speech or
Right.
moderate speech. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, are they still going to enjoy those protections of the Section 230, which allowed them to grow as fast as they did?
Well, in addition to that, if Trump didn't have the mouth on him that he did, they wouldn't have grown like they did. I think that he caused a lot of controversy, he caused a lot of drama, and people are attracted to drama. It's what sells. So when you got a guy that has a mouth on him, you're not thinking he's an idiot. I'm done listening to this guy. You're thinking he's an idiot. What is he going to say next that I can get all excited about? And how can I interject my opinion? So I still find that ironic that the guy that helped these people, these companies, big tech grow to the level that they did, shut him down and shut Parler down. It's like, I mean, I'm not a fan of his rhetoric either. Let's be clear, but um, it just very political. I think that's all it comes down to is politics, and that's so sad. It should People should be allowed to have free enterprise. They should be allowed to run their business the way that they want to within the law, and the law should make sense. But I mean, how weird. We're the same country that tried to impeach a president that was no longer in office. So what's that? What does that say for us?
Yeah, I mean, the only reason they were trying to finish this impeachment is so he can't run for president
Exactly.
again. So, I mean, it's really just political blocking at this point.
Yeah.
And I don't think they'll be successful in the end because I don't think they'll have enough votes. But
Right.
they shouldn't be wasting money on it anyhow because he's not in office anymore. The Constitution's pretty clear about that, but people are arguing about that. But that's a whole nother topic there. But it'll be definitely interesting to see what happens. I mean, in a true free market, you have these liberal companies that are shutting down conservative companies. You
Yeah.
would think that there would be conservative, media that would pop up to give people an outlet for those sorts of things. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Not holding out big hopes and anything radical will happen anytime quick,
Right.
but it certainly has people talking right now.
Yeah, it does, and it will continue to have them talking, I'm sure. Good
It will.
times.
Well, you ready to talk about career workout?
Yeah, let's talk something positive.
All
Let's
right,
go
let's
for
go do
that.
talk about something positive. It's time to work that career and lift and push and lift and push. You got it. Now harder. Lift and push. It's the career workout. All right, so for career workout here, we have an article, 5 signs you need to take a risk in your career. So what's that all about, Terry?
So, I happen to have a recent opportunity to take a risk, and I took it in my career, and it's going well. And so it got me thinking, how often do I do this? How often do I take risks in my career? How often does anybody take risks in their career? And I come down to when it comes to actually, building my career up or taking that next step in my career, I don't do that very often. I don't think. Maybe I do, but for me, it's like I kind of take some what I think are some safe routes, some routes that are um, low risk, so they're kind of like low reward a little bit. So I started looking around, and I found that sometimes taking risks, especially if they're big risks, they can yield really big rewards. And I think outside of work, we all experience those big rewards if we take the big risks. And if you've been a business owner, then you also know what it's like to take a big risk and get a big reward. But you also know that sometimes not well calculated risk will result in you having to pay out versus somebody paying into you. And so I thought, well, this would be, how many other people out there don't take risks when they could, and how do they know? Like, when is the time to strategize a risk, and how do you do it? So started looking around, and I found this article on Forbes.com, 5 signs you need to take a risk in your career. And it starts off with the number one is you're self-sabotaging because you're bored. So if you are, and it's about not feeling challenged at work, not feeling for me, that's not feeling purposeful. I like to feel like I'm doing something, like I'm making a little bit of a difference. I don't have to feel like I'm making a huge difference, but I need to feel like the what I'm contributing makes sense and it's worthwhile. It's not always going to be valued. It's nice to feel valued at work, but there are times when you're just going to have those. I don't feel valued, but that's okay because the paycheck is nice. But if you're just outright bored more than 40, 50% of the time, you're probably going to end up self-sabotaging yourself and essentially keeping yourself from getting noticed for that next promotion, or being seen as somebody that's going to be the next big thing at work. And so you definitely want to, if you're bored and you can't get any more work from your own boss because they tell you I don't have anything for you, that it's probably time to look in other places and take that risk to jump to the next career or to the next promotion. This is a great one. I've never felt this way myself necessarily, where you've hit a ceiling and you're wasting potential. And I've seen other people that have got to this point where, some of us are steady eddies in our position, and that means we like where we're at, we're happy where we're at, we feel like we've hit our point and we're great. And then there's those that are kind of like me, where it's like, this is great, but I could be doing more. And I want to do more, and I feel like I'm not, my skills aren't being used to their fullest. And I know that I know I have felt that way. I don't know if you felt that way before, Chris. Being an engineer, that's going to be a completely different feeling than I'm not an engineer, so that's going to be a
Right.
completely different mindset. Um, but when you feel like you've hit the top of where you can go in your position, you've made it that fabulous art that it's going to be, you're not gaining, you're not being challenged, you're not growing, then it's probably time to look at what risks you can take to start building onto your career a little bit more and take that next step to build up on your career. Your fears don't stand up to scrutiny. And so what that means is that you've making a change scares you, and if you are, you know if you share these fears with other people, and as the article says, you share them with friends or colleagues, and they don't seem as alarmed as you do, then then maybe you're holding yourself back. And so if you're overthinking things, you are reading into things that aren't there, and you'll know this because people are going to say, I don't think that's what that is. I think you're overthinking that. I think you're making too much of that. Then it's a good sign that maybe you're as far as you can go mentally in your position, and you might even be a little bit burned out and ready for the next step. And so it's time to start looking at other options. Time to start looking at risks. Your life is in flux anyway. Whose life hasn't been in flux this entire last year of COVID? Anybody? Anybody? I feel like hollering Bueller. Um, when you got to be careful to recognize when your life is in transition, your personal life or your kids' lives are in transition, which will definitely impact you. I know it does me, Chris. I'm sure you can get on that train. When things change in your kids' lives, it definitely changes your life a little bit. So you need to understand where the changes are at, and if they are definitely impacting you at work, or if if you're just letting your personal life spill into your work life. So be careful to identify the boundaries between work and personal and emotional, for sure, because sometimes you can be experiencing high emotional changes. Like I've got a friend that's gone through a breakup, and to her everything was falling apart. She hated her job, and then once she got past the breakup, she's like, oh, I love my job, I don't want to leave my job. So you really need to be careful as to where the changes really need to occur at. And if you are, what's the word? It's really huge. Compartmentalizing.
Hmm.
I think I said it right. I never say that word right.
Yeah.
Be sure to learn how to compartmentalize so that you don't take an unnecessary risk because you weren't paying attention to what was going on around you. And then five, and this is it kind of this one, when you're being called, that reminds me of something religious. I've been called to this. This is my calling. Um, those are specific to talents. And so if you've like, going back to what you said, Chris, about specializations, when you're in a place where you're not getting to use that specialization and there's this job that's hollering at you, and it appeals to all of your strengths, it looks like it's going to challenge your weaknesses and help you grow there. And it just looks like it's just calling to you. You really need to look at that kind of risk and what does the reward look like associated with that risk, and how can you make that risk happen. And that's I think the biggest thing is strategizing risks and making sure that when you go for them, you're communicating to the proper people, you're being honest with yourself, and that you're not catching the wrong person by surprise, because that can certainly backfire when you're trying to build your career. That's a good way to take, have your career take a negative turn if you're not careful. And so that's kind of in looking at the things that I've been the risk that I've been looking at here, which was kind of an unexpected one. I was able to look through all these myself and kind of determine, yeah, I'm kind of new to where I'm at, but I think there is some opportunity here. I think there's a worthwhile risk to take. And as I looked through the strategizing of it and talked with my allies, I was able to say, yeah, this is going to be a worthwhile risk and I can go ahead and pursue it. I don't know that I've taken a risk that went wrong because I've been too much of a scaredy cat in my past. What about you, Chris? Have you taken any risks and gotten a reward out of it, or gotten hit, sideswiped with it?
Well, yeah, I mean, through my career, I always tell, new folks or folks that are just starting their career, if you had talked to me at the beginning of my career and asked me where my career was going to go, I would have drawn this nice straight line. And in reality, if I gave a 3-year-old a crayon, that would have been a more accurate map of where my career went, and
Right.
I've certainly had jobs that, I took and then decided, yeah, well, this wasn't such a great move. It wasn't the right fit. The company wasn't a right fit, or the position wasn't a right fit, that kind of a thing. But I
Yeah.
mean, I think overall the position changes have been good, and they've allowed me to grow and allowed me to try a lot of different things. And so I think overall it's been positive. You'll get one, here and there that, really felt like a mistake. But I think overall, challenging yourself in a new position to grow, maybe being a little uncomfortable in the beginning, not
Yeah.
all that bad of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely had a position where I thought, oh, this was bad. This is bad. We need to leave. Not good. And then it's hard to know, how do you just jump ship right away, or do you transition easily out? What do you do? And
Yeah, and
so
I think
it's
that's just individual, right? It's every
yeah.
situation is different, and sometimes new opportunities don't always come around just right away. So,
Yeah.
I think the big thing is don't take steps backwards. Just because you're uncomfortable, don't take a step backward to go back to where you were. Just because you're maybe a little bit uncomfortable. I mean, and
Yeah.
again, every situation is different. You're going to have to evaluate it because there may be times that it's totally appropriate to say, you know what, this isn't for me. This isn't a good fit. I'm not going to grow here, whatever
Yeah.
it is. And then go back to something else that you were doing. But, I would
Yeah.
encourage people, if, you move into a position or you see a position that's available to you that you can apply for or go for, if it's making you a little bit uncomfortable, it'll probably give you the opportunity to grow.
Yes, that's the key. Uncomfortable does mean growth, one way or another. Just try it. Try it. It'll be fine.
Try it. You'll love it.
Mikey likes it.
Mikey likes it. Yeah. Half our listeners probably don't know who Mikey is that we're talking about.
Oh my gosh. Please tell me you do. Well, they just came out with a new commercial, but Mikey's a chick, so she's a little girl this time, so it should be interesting.
I
I'm
haven't
kidding.
seen that one. You ready
It's
to do our
cute.
career fail?
Oh, please. I'm dying for this one.
Career fail of the week. So, what have you got here for career fail? I can't even say this word, so I'm going to let you
So,
take care of it.
it's Seiki. Her name is Jen Psaki. So, Return of the Psaki. So, if you have been following Biden's administration, Jen Psaki, that's Psaki. She has returned to the White House. She was a part of the Obama administration, and she did not float too far away during Trump's 4 years. She's been in the background. And with Biden's administration, he named her as his White House press secretary. And so I find this interesting for several things. One, she was not a well liked individual. Her first go around in the Obama administration, I think she was the director of communications then, and she was not the most popular person. And when you follow an act like McEnany, Kayleigh McEnany, it's those are some big badass shoes to fill. I watched McEnany. Somebody correct me because I'm pretty sure I'm saying that wrong. I watched Kayleigh as she just literally just handed reporters their back into them in the press secretary in the White House press secretary room and the briefing room. And there's memes on them. There's some really hilarious memes, and she really, I mean, Sarah Sanders did a great job, but Kayleigh just took that job and blew it out of the water. She didn't take gruff from any of the reporters she was talking to. She took on the tough questions. She powered through everything, and she didn't hesitate. She didn't stutter. She made it real clear, what she knew, and she's very confident. She's very poised, very well put together. Enter Jen Psaki, who you basically go from, this is the easiest way to put it. You went from ass kicker to an ass kisser. Is kind of where it's going on to, and she's not receiving any difficult questions. She's, as the article says, she's handing an olive branch to the reporters after 4 years of so-called combativeness from the Trump administration. And so I'm kind of worried about how she's being seen, because the feedback I'm seeing on social media is not kind. It is not kind at all from the way that she presents herself. She's being compared to Kayleigh a lot. Kayleigh was very high maintenance looking. Psaki is very not high maintenance looking. The way that they offer information, Jen Psaki's presentation verbally is very, I'll get back to you on that. I haven't had that conversation. I'm not aware of that information. I've not received comment on that. So she's found like 2,000 ways to say, I don't know. And so she doesn't seem to be very well prepared. She doesn't seem to have her words very fluid. There's a lot of uhs and ums and ohs. If you watch her, and I've watched her a lot this last week, she touches her face a lot. She touches her hair a lot. She's just not well put together at the podium. And that worries me. When you're the press secretary and you're coming in after somebody like Kayleigh McEnany, I'm going to keep screwing that up. You've got some big shoes to fill. There's some expectations that have been set. And this worries me a little bit that you come in, and I realize she's got her own style, but she's got in my opinion, a very condescending look on her face when any reporter is asking her a question. You know, that half-hearted smile your mother would give you as you're asking for something from her, and you can see that look is like, I can't believe you're asking me this right now. And you're like, oh, I feel like I'm entering into dangerous territory. I should probably back out while I still have a chance. And that's that look that she has on her face 90% of the time, if not the entire time that she's in the press room. And so I worry about this a little bit. I don't feel like this is a great way to represent yourself. I don't feel like this is the representation that the Biden administration deserves. And I say that, and I'm not a Biden fan. I'm not a Biden supporter. I take that back. I'm a Biden supporter because I want him to succeed. So let's keep that straight. I did not vote for this man. I don't agree with much of anything that he says, but I want him to be successful. But I wish he was represented by somebody stronger, somebody that could say, yeah, he said we're going to get these vaccinations and we're going to find a way to do it. This is the plan right now, and that plan could change. Something forceful and dominating on that stand, and she's just weak, and it's just not she's getting a lot of negative feedback. So I don't know how long she'll be in this role. That'll be interesting to see how long before they realize she's not a good part of the formula to get Biden's likability up and hold it up. I don't think she's going to hold it down very long.
Yeah, it'll be, we'll see how long she lasts. Certainly, we have seen a change in tone from the press corps as far as heavy hitting questions. We really haven't seen the press do any hard hitting, combative type journalism with this president. So, I think you're seeing a much different, press secretary. You're seeing a much different, thing on TV than what we've seen the last 4 years.
Well, yeah, just from things like why, Peter Fauci is, I think that's his last name with Fox News. He's the Fox News White House correspondent, so he's in the press room with the White House press secretary, and he has been, and he sits down, and first off, she gets his name wrong multiple times before they have to have a sidebar conversation with her to say his name is Peter, not Steve. And he wouldn't correct her at the time. They took her aside politely, and hopefully she's gotten it straightened out. But things like, why wasn't Biden wearing a mask after he just signed the executive order that you have to wear a mask on all federal property? She's like, well, he was celebrating. Yeah. It's like, that's what you're gonna know. Like, it wasn't at all convincing. It sounded like a lie. It just wasn't like, really, that's all he was celebrating. Can I celebrate and take my mask off? Is that how we're gonna do this from now on? Like,
Yeah. Well,
such a
I mean,
disappointment.
you're certainly not going to see things like who's the Jim Acosta from was it from CNN, who was berating the president and really should have been thrown out by security. I mean, he was
Right.
being very rude, and he was lauded by the press for being a hero, right?
Right.
I certainly don't think you're going to see anything like that for the next 4 years.
Nope. I think this is the softball questions and the soft cheese questions, I believe, are the new terms that are going to become very popular when it comes to Seiki. And that's the sad thing too, because she's not being challenged. She's not going to have the opportunity to prove what she can do. And that is such a disservice to her. If she's good at what she does, throw those hard-hitting questions at her and make her prepared for them. But she looks like small time compared to her predecessors, and that's not good for anybody's career. You want to come out and just be confident, say what you got to say instead of the 2,000 ways to say I don't know. I'm very impressed. I didn't know there's that many ways to say I don't know. I have no idea. And just like that's, and then there's no
Yeah,
follow
but
up.
I mean, to
So
be fair, I mean, is that a position that you would want to do? Because it's not one that I don't think I would want to do that.
um I can answer in a way. My first instinct is yeah, because I don't like Biden. I am supportive of him because I want him to do a good job because of how it's going to impact me and my family and those that are in similar situations to myself. But yeah, I would want to have some sort of representation to say I don't like you, but I'm going to do the best job I can because we got to convince these people that you are good for the country. We got to convince these people that unity is the way to go. And this press secretary position is going to be intricate in how that gets done at this point in time. So they're not utilizing her in that role positively enough for the things for the decisions he's making. And that's where her predecessor Kaylee was really good about being that. Look, this is what Trump's doing, and this is why he's doing it, and you don't have to like it. And by the way, you've got your facts wrong, and this is what was actually said. I can help you with that. So but I'm a challenge seeker. I like those kinds of things, and I like to influence, and so that would be a very tough role to have. And you wouldn't be liked right away, but that's the whole point. Is you want to turn that likability around, and she's not going to do it. She doesn't have a prayer the way she's going at this point.
Well, since we're live and on record here, I'm going to say you're weird for wanting to do that job. You're
You
very
have no,
weird.
you've seen me take on certain challenges, and I'm sure you've been like, all right, what is wrong with you? What is
I
wrong with you, Tara? Why are you
yeah,
doing that?
I think the best thing that I saw from the press this last 4 years was who was on Saturday Night Live that was she was imitating, was Melissa McCarthy, I think, was imitating was it Spicer was the press secretary at the time, and
Oh,
she kept going fake news CNN. What do you have to ask? There's a couple of Saturday Night Live skits where she actually had the podium was a Segway, and she was like driving around. She looked like the press secretary, but it was on a podium that would move around on a Segway. I
you're
don't
talking
know.
about like a mall cop.
Yeah. But the podium was built on top of the Segway, so she
Oh
never
my
moved from
gosh.
behind the podium. Anyhow, great skits. But yeah, that was certainly one job that I would not want to have to do. I think if I was to do it, I probably, would be tired of answering the same questions over and over again. Because the press tends to hammer you 18 ways from Sunday on the same question. Just kind of like move on, people.
Well, not in this
Certainly
not
a
in this
tough,
case.
certainly a
They
tough
would
job.
Not in this case. They asked what Biden had for lunch, for crying out loud, or what kind of ice cream he was eating for dessert. I mean, they're not hard hitting
Yes,
her.
very, very hard hitting questions here. I think I saw Babylon Bee as a satire website, and they had an article that showed press corps grills press secretary on what President Biden's favorite kind of Disney princess is, or who's the favorite Disney princess.
It's sad because it's true. That would be a question that would get asked and it would be answered. I'm not sure about that, but I'll circle back with you. Thanks for asking. So glad you asked. That's a great question. Like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Well, what do you say we go
Oh,
on to our media madness?
oh, it's a way better way to go. Yes.
Welcome to Media Madness.
All right, so for Media Madness this week, you have got an oldie up here, right?
I
You got
do.
Goonies. You got the
Yeah.
Goonies. Tell me all about the Goonies.
You know the Goonies. Everybody knows the Goonies. I've been hitting the old school stuff really hard here lately because I just love looking at these old movies, and it's so weird to say old movies. It's like talking about Turner Classic Movies or something. But seeing them on these high def smart TVs, it is such a neat thrill to see the changes in this. It's a different perspective, is what it is. And so, the Goonies came back and they came out in like 80 something, 19. What is that?
Yeah, it was an old movie. I mean, it's certainly a classic.
Yeah, I think it's 1985 or something like that. Yeah, it's 1985. And so you're talking about a group of friends who their neighborhood is in it's being threatened by a developer, real estate developers who are looking to put a golf course and maybe a shopping center or something like that in, and the homeowners don't have the money to save their own neighborhood, so they're having to sell off and move away to whatever other place. And so these kids, they're going through mom and dad's attic and they find this pirate map and they're like, oh yeah, we know this story. And it's hard to tell, is the story real, is it just an old relic, what's going on? And so these young kids, and they're seemingly like pre-teens to early teens, and they're like, let's go after it, let's go chase this pirate treasure down, and let's get rich and save our parents' houses. And so take off on their bikes of all things, and they follow a treasure map and they get chased down by criminals, and and they eventually find the pirate treasure and they find all the riches, and they take off with the booty, and then the criminals catch up with them and the criminals take the booty from them, and they make their escape. And in the end, as it turns out, one of the kids had a bunch of gems in his he had it hidden in a little pocket in his jacket, and it was enough to save, as they call it, save the Goondocks. And so it's which is why it's called the Goonies, because they were based at the Goondocks. It's such an old cult classic. It's just fun. The humor is clean, I think, for the most part. I don't remember any real dirty jokes in there. I think there was a couple of kissing scenes, but nothing inappropriate. It's just a really good family favorite movie. I know my kids get excited about it when we sit down to watch it, or we see it on TV. Like, it's one of those things where as soon as you see it, you're like, I have to sit and watch. I just gotta sit and watch and take it in. So
I don't
just
think we can
old feel
talk
good.
about this without doing some of the famous lines, right?
It's, oh my gosh, what is it? The truffle shuffle.
Yeah, the truffle shuffle, that's way in the beginning of the movie. And then
Yep.
there's the hey you guys.
Yes, that is awesome. I love it. Um, yeah, it's just a great feel good movie. It's one of those that I love to turn back on, and you can enjoy it as a kid, and as an adult, you really get to enjoy it, and you kind of catch some of the adult humor in there. And so yeah, I had to pull this one up out of the archives and bring it back and revive it, because it's perfect. Everybody loves the Goonies. How can you? I've never met anybody who didn't love the Goonies.
It's definitely a great movie, and I don't think they ever did a sequel, right? They never did a Goonies 2.
No, but I didn't. What I did not know, while they didn't have the sequel, there was a major edited part of the movie. Did you hear about this? The
I did not hear
octopus.
about this. What's this?
Okay, so at the end of the movie, when the kids have been saved, their parents get to them, the authorities have shown up, and the news reporters are showing up, and they're interviewing the kids, and they're talking about, what happened, how'd you feel? And the little Asian kid, Data, he's like, well, the octopus was very scary. And you're like, octopus? like, I don't remember an octopus. And you're like, were they lying? Like, what's happening here? Well, because when they find the pirate ship and the kids get thrown off the pirate ship by the criminals, there's an octopus in the water and the kids fight off an octopus, like this ginormous octopus that's been living with the pirate ship, just hanging out there. And it's literally just like huge, gargantuan octopus. And I'd seen the deleted scene later on. It's like, oh my gosh, that was literally, so they forgot to delete another part of the scene in the movie that led back to this. It's like, it was so cheesy when you, and I can see why they cut it. It was super cheesy looking when you see it. It's like, there's clearly, this is fake. It's not even remotely, it doesn't fit in the storyline. You can see why they edited it out. But I was floored when I saw that. I was watching a special on the Goonies, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. There really was an octopus. That kid wasn't crazy or lying. I'll be darned. So, but yeah, there's no sequel, just a crazy octopus scene that was deleted later on.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I guess you can go visit the Goonies house, right?
Hmm. I didn't know that.
Let
Can
me.
you
I'm gonna.
really?
Yeah. So I think you can. It's in. Is it Astoria?
Astoria, yeah.
Astoria. I'm gonna bring it up here.
Yeah.
If
What
let's
is that
see.
about?
So yeah, it's in. I think it's in. Is it Oregon? Is where it is?
I think so. I think, yeah. That sounds about right. I'll be darned. There it is. That is crazy. Oh my gosh, you really can.
All right, so I'm going to bring it up here. Yeah, so I guess it's closed right now for COVID, probably. But there's the
Can
original
imagine.
Goonies house that you can go visit. And I think I knew somebody at work here who recently went and visited it. But yeah, it's in Astoria, Oregon, is where it's at. So yeah,
Oh, that is
definitely something to
cool.
put on the onto the bucket list for sure.
Oh my gosh, that would be cool. That's awesome. I didn't
That would
realize
be
that was a
great. You
thing.
know, if anybody wants to donate to us here, we'll put a fund together and we'll do a live podcast in front of the Goonies house. How's
There
that
you
sound?
go. That'll work. That's awesome. I didn't realize that was the thing. Now I've been to one movie set that was in a Wakita, Oklahoma. And it's kind of funny to see something like that, that it's all there and you can go visit it. That's crazy. So cool. So cool. So yeah, go watch the Goonies, relive your
Definitely
childhood. It's
awesome.
great.
Yeah, the Goonies is always a good one, and it's one that
Yes.
you can just watch over and over again, and a couple times a year, just throw it on and relive the good old times, right?
Absolutely.
So my media
Yes.
pick is significantly less interesting than yours. So I'm doing class right now, and it's consumer neuroscience is the name of the class. It's a very interesting class, very nerdy class. But one of our textbooks, because we have more than one, is called Persuasion Theory and Reference, or sorry, Persuasion Theory and Research, and that's the name of it here. So it's an interesting class. One of the chapters that we're going through right now talks about when you're making a survey, how to mathematically score the survey and how to put your questions, and so they are meaningful and things like that. And it's really kind of interesting, the whole science behind how to persuade somebody, for whether you're
Hmm.
trying to sell them a product or trying to change their idea about a political view, those sorts of things. There is actually quite a bit of stuff behind this persuasion thing, and I just find it fascinating. So there's lots of books and studies out there and things like that, but definitely a topic that you can get way down the rabbit hole in. And this book is one of those rabbit holes that you can go down. But lots and lots and lots of science behind this stuff.
What are you getting from the like? What's gotten to you? Like what's been something you're like, oh my god, that's awesome. I can use that. Moments.
Well, so this class is consumer neuroscience, which, basically you have, marketing, which is, these are generally ways that you can persuade people to buy your products, kind of thing, right?
Right.
Neuroscience gets into the actual science behind. Okay, so we're going to hook you up to different machines where we can measure things, and then we're going to show you an ad, or we're going to ask you a question, and then we're going to record your biological reaction to that, right? So this
Oh.
is where it gets to be a lot more concrete, a lot more scientific, Whereas traditional marketing is just, you do focus groups, and then this group says they like this ad and that group says they don't like this ad. And it's a lot less, it's a lot less numbers based, a lot less scientific. So
Right.
overall, the class is really exciting, but it is a very, very in-depth topic. Something, like I said, it's rabbit holes of rabbit holes that you can go down with this stuff.
Oh wow. That's awesome. How far are you in your studies? How much more you got to go?
So I've got I think 3 or 4 more classes before I get my master's in media psychology, and
Yay.
then I need to decide if I want to go on and do the PhD, which I'll probably end up doing because I just can't stop. But so far, this has been really interesting. Upcoming class that I'm really looking forward to is a class on virtual reality and augmented reality. So that'll be a lot of fun. And but so far, a lot of really great, basic information that we've covered. We've done, how to advocate. There's been a lot of really interesting things that we've done in this course so far. As
Nice.
far as the media psychology goes, and so I'll keep you posted. Really interested
Yeah.
to see more about how this, neuro stuff works because as an engineer it really kind of fits more in that whole scientific realm, which is mad scientist kind of thing.
Right. So you say you can't stop. You'll probably pursue the PhD. What's your PhD going to be in if you go after it?
I mean, if I stay on this trajectory, it'll be a PhD in media psychology. So, media psychologists are typically the people they bring on the news every time there's violence in video games, and they start talking about those kinds of topics. But really,
Right.
it's how can you, it's basically like an advanced marketing degree, so to speak. But
Nice.
it's really how does media impact the individual or the
Yeah.
consumer, and how can you use that media to get certain outcomes. And so
Right.
there's been it's a fairly new topic that right now. The degree itself is only about 10 years old, but I think I'm kind of an early adopter. I think it's something that's going to be very important upcoming here in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I had considered a PhD when I was in academia, and I've since let that go. But I'm now teaching for a college, so it's like God, you kind of get that itch, like you said. It's hard to quit once you get on a good momentum and a good groove. It's hard to stop. It's like God, you kind of want to go all the way and just finish it off and hit that final button. But man, I if you do it, I a don't tell me about it because I'm gonna want to do it along with you because it's addictive when you have somebody doing it with you.
Well, come on down. I need
But
somebody to cheat off of on the homework.
I can, well, I can, I'll check your homework. I'm going to be doing that anyway, so I'll just check your homework before your professor does. But I've seen it. I would just continue on, and it's funny because you've got different degrees. You have an engineering degree, and you're going to have your social media degree, and I stuck on the same path. Even if I got my PhD, it'd be in industrial psychology, which is right along the lines of everything I've done so far. So it's interesting. I'm very impressed and really in awe of those that go from one degree to something completely different. It's like, how do you get through that? That just blows my mind how you have to twist your mind and really train it into something different because you're literally teaching yourself from scratch, then doing it at the master level. So I'm really impressed by what you're doing.
Well, I mean, I think it's just going from one medium to another. I mean, in my undergraduate degree in engineering, it was a lot of numbers and not so much of writing papers, right? In psychology,
Right.
it's completely the opposite. It's all writing papers and reading. And,
Yeah.
so far, the one thing that's kind of overwhelming is I've had one class where, you just, the amount of reading that you had to do, the teacher literally told us that we had to skim the material because there wasn't enough time in the day to read all of the stuff that we were assigned. So that's a little bit frustrating, because I just want to do it all, and so
Right.
certainly it's been a little bit challenging, but I think it's going to be worth it. For me, I've got the engineering degree, which is fine. I'm now doing management, which is great too.
Yeah.
But really, my career has been focused on aviation, and in that segment. And so I really thought it was important to have a backup plan to be able to work outside the aviation segments. Particularly because we tend to be so up and down economically in aviation, and so So that's why I wanted to go do something totally different. So far, it's been pretty interesting. There's been, some times where it's kind of had to slug through this sort of thing, and
Yeah.
but for most part, it's been pretty good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'll be happy for when you get done. It's a great feeling.
Well, I'll be happy when I'm done too. Um, I should have about a little over a year left to finish this one off, and then we'll see. Maybe I'll take a little break or not. But I've got two kids that are probably going to go to college, and maybe I can teach at the college level here.
Yep.
Let them go to school for free, kind of thing. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Good luck. So, what do you think? Are we about ready to wrap it up? Did we forget anything? Are we
I
good? What do we
I,
miss?
I don't think we forgot anything. I'm ready to wrap this up if you are.
I can do that. Let's do it. So, we thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Biz and Mayhem podcast. If you like this episode, show us a little love by posting a review on iTunes. And don't forget to send us a few bucks on Patreon or PayPal. We will love you forever because it's not free to do this show. And we definitely want to keep doing this show for you guys. And I mean, we enjoy it. So, why not? It's fun. To get the show notes, you can, to get the show notes for this episode, you can head over to the bizandmayhem.com website. That's bizandmayhem.com and look for season 2, episode 25. And then you can subscribe to the show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. So until next time, have some fun in the mayhem.
We'll see you later, everybody. Take care. The Biz and Mayhem podcast is produced by Check 6 Creative Studio. If you have a podcast or have been wanting to start one, let us know. We'd love to help you produce and edit your podcast. We'd also love to work with your business on marketing and video production. Visit us on the web at check6studio.com. That's CheckSixStudio.com. Let us know you heard about us on the Biz and Mayhem podcast.